Welcome everybody coming in. Welcome to Taking Back Our Worlds. Welcome everybody. We're gonna get started in just a couple minutes. We're gonna allow some time for people to arrive. Welcome. If you are sitting in Newark, New Jersey right now, we welcome you. If you're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, we welcome you. If you are in neither of those two places, you're anywhere else in the world, we're happy for you to be here for this conversation between Milwaukee and Newark. And you know what? Can I ask you guys a question while we just sort of sit around here? Last week, I asked folks if we were in New Jersey or Milwaukee, where for our panelists, where you take us out to breakfast. And actually, this is a group of people that doesn't just buy food. I know this is a group that makes food. So if you had to share something from your own world with the rest of the group, and we could just imagine you have enough to share even if you don't, what would you share with them from your own work in agricultural production and food production? It could be simple.
So for me, one of the things that people absolutely love that I do, they love everything, but I make these collard green wraps. And yeah, so especially African Americans, we love our collard greens. And so they're all usually, I'm from the South, ham hocks, you know, a lot of meat, and they're cooked to death. They're absolutely delicious, but no nutritional value. So, right.
So before we officially start our conversation, no nutritional value is fine.
None. But so it's this collard greens, everything is raw, and I stuff like kale, red and green carrots, coconut, raisins, raw walnuts. This absolutely delicious cilantro pesto to go with it. So let me say this. Anybody that's in Milwaukee, stop by the 38th and Valete, the corner. I'm going to be on the corner, y'all. 38th and Valete on Wednesday from 3 to 6 p.m. And I'm going to have some of those collard green wraps.
At the farm stand.
Collard green smoothie, Adam.
It's at the farm stand, the new structure.
Yes,
absolutely cool.
Yes.
So, CARENA or Tobias, Caroline was showing off a little there. What we got in Milwaukee. What do you guys got?
So, to me, I would give a person or people a tour of the second most diversely cultured city in New Jersey. And then we'll go eat at Burger Bound and have some sangria.
There you go. That sounds like nutritional value to me.
Okay.
I would share lots of the tomatoes that we're growing. We have so many cherry tomatoes and large tomatoes, all kinds that was actually donated to us, which is amazing.
Cool.
So they're red, they're yellow, they're orange, they're teardrop shaped, they're tiger striped. And I've just been canning them for the winter. That's kind of like my goal, to see like how many cans of tomatoes I can have to use in the winter.
For sure. You just reminded me I'm sitting next to some tomatoes. So I'm from Fidel. What'd you bring to the party?
Well, I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking about those greens, and I don't know. Maybe I brought some. I don't know. I just picked some kale out of this garden over here, so maybe I just brought some fresh kale.
There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
For sure.
Crispy. It's crispy too.
It's like the canvas of the garden bed. So actually, I think we could get started. We just did something. Welcome everybody now. Where that was kind of our improvised welcome activity. And we are gonna get started with this conversation across Milwaukee and Newark. taking back our world, specifically the topic today, taking back our bodies. I appreciate you guys for indulging us in a little bit of competitive generosity, one of my favorite things. Arijit Sen, who is and team, the brilliant folks behind this conversation. Arijit, do you want to give us a little bit of background?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. It's just such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's discussion focuses on food. Food sustains us, nurtures our bodies, and brings communities together. So wresting back our right to food access is at the core of our goals to attain a just world. Yet, talking about food is also talking about land that is colonized, divided, segregated, and destroyed. We do want to acknowledge in Milwaukee that we are on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of Michigami, North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnick rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. Today we connect with the land now called Newark, New Jersey, where the Lenni Lenape were part of the Algonquin nation that once lived in peace. So we do not simply nod at land acknowledgement as a nicety, but as a goal to share and reconsider our ownership of this Commonwealth. Taking Back Our Worlds is a project that explores human responses to social and environmental justice in the city of Milwaukee. Over 8 years, our participation and partnership with residents of Milwaukee's Washington Park and Sherman Park neighborhoods have produced stories of caring, heritage, and civic action that is otherwise ignored and unheard in mainstream media. Our process is different from what is more common in university community collaborations. We do not follow the model of service learning. We do not do planning charrettes, focus groups, social work, or come up with research white papers. We are humanities scholars who believe in the power of the human condition to produce empathy, caring, mutual respect, well-being, and positive change. And we do that via long-term commitment and mutual sharing. We believe in the power of storytelling to transform our world into a better place for all. And we have seen that happen in the work of many of our collaborators, a few of whom are present here today. Our stories became part of a national exhibit on environmental justice involving 20 other cities that was scheduled to show in Milwaukee in June 2020. But that exhibit, of course, got postponed due to the pandemic. Instead, we decided to send the exhibit materials to our community residents in form of weekly student-designed newspapers, stuffed in boxes of produce and herbs offered by 3, now 4 local growers. And I do want to take a moment to thank the growers who have been generous with their offerings. Alice's Garden, Victory Gardens Initiative, Sister McCannon Brown's Homeless Sanctuary, and Groundworks. We envision a new kind of public conversation emerge through food, printed materials, and online meetings this summer so that residents can discuss ways to find the historic processes of racism and injustice. So I do want to say that the conversation starters were not just food boxes. We were not supplying food to the neighborhood. We didn't have the money to do that. Instead, they were a token incentive and a kind of an offering of respect to connect with each other. So for us, the zines were important, and you can see the zines in our website. The Saturday series of webinars is part of such conversations, but in this case, Milwaukee resident leaders have an opportunity to have conversations with change agents in Newark, New Jersey, the home of our institutional partner, the Humanities Action Lab. We hope that these conversations would spark new possibilities of collaborations and solidarities across geographic distances in our common journey to find a just society. So please come back next Saturday for the final of this event, which is on action. How do we act after talking so much? I do want to welcome and thank the participants from Newark, our guests from Newark, and from Milwaukee, my dear friend Adam Carr and Mike Career, who's going to take over from him halfway through today, and a dedicated team of students who have really made this possible: Chelsea Vate, Tatum Markey, Grant Heimerdinger, Mallory Zink, and many others who made the project a reality. This project is funded by a generous grant from the Wisconsin Humanities Council.
Thank you, Arijit. Would you mind turning your video on for a second, Arijit? I just want to point out that we're wearing matching shirts and we coordinated this. We were up talking last night about what we'd wear. Thanks, Arijit, for wearing your matching shirt with me. I'm Adam Carr. I'm going to be leading this conversation. We're going to get to the good part as soon as possible. I just wanted to share this brick, which is a Cream City brick from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is the mascot of our conversation series across Cream City and Brick City. It is, as an analogy, it is substantive, which is what we have here in front of us, substantive people. Working, though, it is also kind of some heavy shit, too. And I know that's the kind of things that each of the people who are here work on as well. They work on matters of great consequence. So Chelsea, can we go into the introduction slides? We're going to get an introduction from each of our incredible panelists. We're going to then move into a conversation about the context of food justice, the work that is happening, then how we might support each other across Milwaukee and Newark. So these are some of our framing questions, and let's get into our first introduction. Caroline, would you mind telling us in a couple minutes who you are and what you do?
Oh, okay, I'm starting first. So hello, everybody. My name is Caroline Carter. I call myself the real food doctor. Now, a little bit of history about me. I am going to be 61 soon. Yay! I am from Yazoo City, Mississippi. So any of you from the South, you know we are all about down home cooking. Everything is fried and dyed and just smothered with cheese and gravy and all this stuff. I loved it, loved it, loved it. Here's the thing. It was good food, but I blew up to almost 300 pounds, suffered from depression, a whole bunch of stuff. Life happened. And as it was happening, I realized that I found myself depressed and, to be very blunt, very suicidal. And just one day, I just couldn't take it anymore. The medication wasn't working. Nothing was working for me. And I just started praying and meditating. And I asked God, I said, God, heal me here and heal me here. And as you know, I was looking for instant gratification. And what God did for me was started sending people my way, and everybody was talking about food and eating food in a way that was foreign to me, and talking about fresh fruits and vegetables and da 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 da. It was unknown to eat kale in its natural state. As a matter of fact, I had never even heard of kale. But after 2 years, I decided to give this a try. And I tell you, that really changed my life and the direction where I was going. I went to some programs where I became a certified raw vegan chef, learned so much about food, enjoyed it. And then when I came back to Milwaukee, I wanted to share that with everybody. I started sharing with my daughter and my son, and she latched onto it. She was diagnosed with hyperparathyroidism. So she was tired all the time. And she was a smart girl, decided not to take the medication because of all the side effects. She was about maybe 15, 16 years old, did not force her to do it. And by the time I got into this, she was into her 20s, late 20s, and she started incorporating the food into her lifestyle, fresh fruits and vegetables, exercising, and so on and so forth. We didn't know the power of this. And then about 6, 7 months later, she had a doctor's appointment. And the doctor asked her, after years of suffering, being tired all the time, et cetera, the doctor said, what's up? For the first time, and I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 14 years, for the first time, her thyroid was in normal range. and we're like, you know.
Caroline,
Yes.
we're going to be able to get to more into your work later.
Yeah. So here it is, y'all. I'm a raw vegan chef right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. One of the things that I do, I live in the Sherman Park area. And because COVID hit, we all had to stay in our communities. And so what I started doing is going into my community, seeing what it is that we need, talking about food, sharing ways that we can create deliciously healthy dishes using fresh fruits and vegetables, helping people understand that eating healthy isn't expensive. That is a myth. So that is what it is that I do. I just love sharing information. Food,
thank you.
guys, get it in.
Look forward to hearing much more from you later. Next, we're moving to Newark, one of our phenomenal panelists out there, CARENA. Can you give us a little introduction to yourself?
Yeah, so hey everybody, I'm CARENA Miles, urban farmer, Ironbound Community Corporation, and also I work with youth, so a youth educator as well. And I've been farming and growing in mainly community garden capacities, and also working in public health for about 5 years now. But I truly enjoy working with youth, because in particular, seeing them, watch how something goes from seed to sprout to vegetable or fruit, really kind of changes their perspective and their relationship with food. And that's what I enjoy the most. I'm from Virginia, and I moved to Newark about 5 years ago. And being in Virginia, from a suburban town, but my grandparents grew up in a very rural area where they farmed as well. So it's interesting kind of learning about their history right now, and kind of seeing this cycle in a relationship with farming and agriculture within my background in history. So that's a little bit about me. I don't want to take up all the time.
So where's this very cool looking person standing with the shovel?
So that's me at Down Bottom Farms. It's half an acre of land, and that's us spreading wood chips. Mm-hmm. We do everything in raised beds. Newark has very contaminated soils, so we can't grow anything in ground. And it's also just, that's asphalt. So we would have to break the ground to do anything at all. And the wood chips is to reduce the heat, because asphalt, and also to prevent weeds. So that's kind of our big summer project this year.
Beautiful. Thank you, CARENA. And that doesn't look dissimilar to a scene you might see in Milwaukee. Next up, we have Tobias, who is doing the work right now as we speak. So Tobias, thanks for taking a break. Can you share a little bit about who you are?
Cool, no problem. So I'm here in the People's Garden, we call it. We're getting prepared for our food distribution. We run a small-scale CSA, Community Support Agriculture Program, which we market as a farm-to-table co-op. And so I am founder and managing director of Newark Science and Sustainability, Inc. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, community-driven organization, and we advocate for the localization of food and energy production, and we do this by way of hands-on education programs around what we call to be our 5 pillars, which is urban agriculture, renewable energy, ecological building, eco-art, and wellness and nutrition.
That was very concise. Can you just tilt your screen a little bit, or your camera, to show us a little bit of what's around you? The bounty.
See.
Oh, there we go.
So my colleague Zoe's here with me. And
yeah, beautiful.
See all that. I have no idea if you see anything. I don't see what you see.
It's great. And look at those tomatoes. Speaking of tomatoes, cool. Thanks, Tobias. Next, we have FIDEL here in Milwaukee, who's a man of many talents, one of which is working within the world of food justice. FIDEL, who are you? You are muted right now.
See,
Yeah, now we got you.
So thank you everyone. Thank you everyone. Who am I? I'm grateful to be here in this conversation, to be invited to participate today. I'm thankful to everybody who put this together, and it's an honor. To be honest, so much learning for me that happens in this food world, in the urban ag world. As Adam said, I'm a man of many creative gifts, if you will. And so, I come from a family that has grown food and been in culinary specialists and has utilized space to like smash those two things together. And I don't really know anything different just in my own home world. And so that translated into me being able to utilize just that awareness and that comfort and that knowledge and that connection to do other projects in the community, related to a lot of things. So it's a lot of different ways I could talk about this, but I'm not that good at talking about it. So you might have to help me along later on in the conversation, Adam or Dr. Carrier, who's here. But it's basically being able to introduce young people and families through a different levels of collaboration. We work with all the organizations that have been mentioned here today, locally here in Milwaukee. And I'm inspired by all of you all. I'm inspired by everyone here from New Jersey. I'm here to learn. I'm here as a student, but using urban agriculture as is called, as it's labeled, using arts and using culture activations is sort of my contribution to humanity scholarship, as our great doctor on the phone called it. And so I'll just stop right there.
Thanks, Fidel. And that photo that was taken on the corner of 5th and Locust across the street from Savoy's at your space, or it's shared space, the Peace Park and Garden.
Yep, and I really wouldn't even pay attention to that. So just right quick, that used to be a dumping ground basically for it was a condemned house there, and people used to throw trash. And then after the house got tore down, it was just overgrown weeds and a dumping grounds for everything you could imagine, including the kitchen sink. And so those beds were put in by some residents, and they were kind of elderly and kind of not really able to maintain them. And so things went array, and then we connected with Groundworks, and we reactivated that space right there on one of the busiest quarters in the city, right next to one of the biggest police terrorist headquarters in the country, the 5th District. And so we get a chance to talk about a lot of things with young people, using art, using agriculture, using space activation. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
All right. And our last introduction, who's going to end up being your moderator for the full conversation, Dr. Michael Carrier. Tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. So as you can see from the slide, I teach at a school called the Milwaukee School of Engineering in Milwaukee. I am a historian, and I've taken to sort of trying to document the history of urban agriculture and urban growing, specifically in Milwaukee, but also in some pieces, the history of urban ag at a national level, and hopefully at some point an international level. I've worked with FIDEL. One of the projects we've worked on is a group called Reciprocity, which essentially, kind of building off of what FIDEL said, tried to bring the idea of culture and design and aesthetics into urban growing. In the photograph you see here is me not singing, yelling. I come from a hardcore punk background. And so the do-it-yourself, the DIY ethic that I grew up sort of embracing as a punk rock kid, I love seeing in urban growing projects. And also sort of the critique that alternative culture can offer some of these mainstream institutions, whether it be music or food systems.
Excellent. So I'm going to have to excuse myself here in a moment. It turns out I was just a hype man for the beginning of the conversation. I'm handing over moderating to Dr. Carrier. My goddaughter, my first godchild, is being baptized in 5 minutes, and I'm hosting that Zoom, so I got to go over to that one. But
sorry.
So okay, so if Adam is gone, well, are you gone, Adam? Are you fully gone?
I got muted by the host, so they were giving me the hook.
Okay. Do Do you want to pose a question before you go? Or is he gone now? Okay, I think Adam is gone. So for the first question, a number of you have talked about the idea of healing, and that can whether that's through Carolyn and the mental health issue, or CARENA with soil and the idea of legacies of pollution. The idea of urban growing is healing. How do you see your work in both Milwaukee and Newark as contributing to this idea of sort of healing, nurturing, undoing damage wrought by systems, whether that's physical or mental? How do you see this work tying into those big questions? And we can, what I think would work is if we go sort of Newark, excuse me, Milwaukee, we shift back and forth if possible.
So we're starting with me?
It doesn't, if we were, sure.
Oh,
That's
okay.
cool.
So for me, I found that that's food. I found that food really did make me feel alive and vibrant. Really, it helped me become the woman that I am today. I found that food, in the way you prepare it, is so powerful, and what it did for me, it impacted how I felt about myself, what I thought and what I did, and really opened my world. And I am so happy to see you here, Vidal, because your wife Tamika was one of the women years ago, who used to host an event, and I think it was about eating healthy. I mean, that sister was awesome, and that's what it did. It connected me with real people out there doing the real work.
Sure.
And it, you know, it just gave me my life, and I'm just so happy to see so many folks here, helping the people, really making an impact on people's lives.
Sure.
For real, where they are.
Sure.
I think sometimes we miss that, and that's what I love. I love getting connected with the people, with everyday people, the residents. How do they live? What do they think? What are some of their obstacles, and how do we connect with each other?
Sure. So I'm going to call on a Newark person now. CARENA, would you want to build off that? And I also want to note to everyone watching that this is an open conversation. So if you have a question or comment, want to drop a link into the chat, please do. So CARENA, do you want to talk about these things?
Yeah, I think with my experience working with youth, a lot of the youth actually find growing and farming to be kind of troubling in a sense. They have a odd, almost embarrassing relationship with it, especially if they're Black or Latinx. A lot of my Black youth will go back to times when, you know, there were enslaved folks, and they related to that experience. And then my Latinx youth will relate it to farm workers' experience in that sense. And it's kind to acknowledge that experience and talk within it, and also kind of look at it as farming and growing can be empowering, and it also gives you a lot of autonomy that youth don't normally have because they're youth. And so it's challenging, but it's also, it's interesting when they are able to kind of go into the space and utilize, especially down bottom farms, as a community space in some place that they feel safe and can call their own, but also as a space where they feel like they have more power to grow their food. They talk to their community members. They talk and build relationships with themselves and with others. And that is where I think the healing process comes in with them, when they are able to kind of feel like they have some direction and some sort of say and yeah, so that's their healing process.
Sure.
Kind of like my healing process as well, working with them, and kind of try to building upon that.
Sure. Fidel, do you want to take off from there? Unmute yourself, Fidel. Yep, there you go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So very similar to what CARENA expressed. Working in this environment, Milwaukee, the healing, comes in a lot of different forms. Personally, for myself, and then what we think about in terms of how does the communal healing happen naturally. We all understand, everybody on this line understands being outside is healing, being in nature is healing, being in the dirt is healing. We all understand that, and we probably can walk through gardens and identify certain plants, and we could probably say what attributes of those plants could be healing to our bodies or healing to certain ailments, right? We can have that conversation, a lot of us on this phone. However, a lot of our community members, family members, not just youngsters, but a lot of us may not be able to realize the healing that's just in the food that we eat, and realizing our food as medicine. So we get a chance to talk and have these conversations as a family with elders. It's intergenerational when you talk about these things with healing. We talking about traditions passed down, and how we eat the wrong foods, and then how we translate into shifting our families and our homes back into a more healthy diet, a more self-sustaining diet. And I think a lot of it is self-explanatory for us, a lot of us on this line, but the healing comes from when we share it with the babies and when we share it with the community. That's when I think the healing is most impactful, and when we're able to translate that in different ways to where it's relatable and it resonate in plain terms to the community and the people that need it the most, and it may not understand, it may not know, it may not be immersed in the education that come along with food and food justice and environmental racism, and a lot of terms and words that are fairly new, but our grandmothers and grandfathers knew what to do with the land, and they didn't need all these terms, and they didn't need the boxes, and they didn't need the labels, and they didn't need the degrees or the acumen or the acknowledgement necessarily. They just needed some land, and it was mostly like, leave me alone, let me work my land. So that's the healing in it also. Self-determination is the healing.
Thank you, Fidel. Tobias, do you want to add on to this conversation while you're still working?
Sorry. Yeah. So thank you for the acknowledgement. But wait, let me just turn my view back. Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Multitasking over here. I apologize, disrupting the flow. But so we see agriculture as we see urban agriculture as a way of demonstrating how it contributes to the wellness of a community and also the local economy. Through our workshops, we demonstrate how food is medicine. We see gardens as a way of invigorating people's senses. We see gardens as the true symbols of hope. We demonstrate how we can turn, by adopting vacant lots, we transform abandonment into sustainability, and so that's how I summarize the meaningfulness of the work I do.
So we had a question come in through the chat talking about sort of the idea of networking, particularly in Newark, and the idea of urban farming, improving eating habits. One of the stories in Milwaukee is, particularly when it comes to neighborhoods, that there's often a sense of isolation, or that neighborhoods are kind of disconnected from one another. And that can have obviously a host of impacts, including on issues of access to healthy food. How does the work that you're doing possibly address that issue? This idea of connecting, and a few of you have already talked about this, the idea of connecting people first and foremost, but then connecting them, to use Fidel's language, to sort of empower them to eat better. What has worked? What challenges do you still face in kind of making those important connections? And so whoever wants to start, jump right in.
So I've done some traveling. This work has allowed me to travel in other places of the country and even abroad. And a common theme, I thought it was just isolated to Newark, but it's a common theme all over. And community engagement is one of the most challenging components to the work that I do and others are doing with regards to connecting people with healthy food access through this labor of love of farming, and gardening. And so I, having a background, an educational background in creative writing, filmmaking, and book publishing, I use those tools to, short stories and short films and videos and photographs to kind of move people in a way where they want to participate, right? And see and show that it's it's an easy concept or easy avenue to participate. And so don't make the process challenging or difficult for anyone, but more inviting if I can. And I do that through the tools that I've been trained with, which is photography and filmmaking.
Gotcha. Thank you, Tobias. Anyone from Milwaukee want to jump in after that? Carolyn and Fidel?
I think I've had several jobs. One of the jobs I had, I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I worked for a nonprofit organization. And so, and what I found from that experience, even to now, is that for me, I want to do more in educating the parents, because I found that the children latched on really, really quick. They love exploring and learning new things and that thing. But what I found is that when it came down to really doing it at home, the parents didn't do it until we engaged them. And once I engaged the parents and the parents bought into it, then I found that the relationship between the parent and the child changed a lot. And when that relationship changed, the relationship within the entire family, their friends, and even changed. And so what I put myself out there to show people and to inspire people that yes, there are Black people out here who eat vegetarian, eat vegan. And so I just want to say this right here. I'm glad that I'm a part of this. Thank you, Regent. And because I'm connected with FIDEL, I see so many people that out there that I didn't know that they were really still doing this. So I think more work needs to be done in African Americans, Black people connecting with each other, networking with each other, doing that work so they just won't, I didn't know, yeah.
CARENA, do you want to jump in after that?
It's some really good points that, I think are probably relatable and true across the board. I think collaborations and networking our work is so important, because I wouldn't be on this line right now if it wasn't for collaborations and people that say, you know what, we're going to recognize the work. Fidel might be at the garden doing a Saturday afternoon activation. Tobias might be at the garden, at the garden, literally working on the Saturday afternoon, getting it in. Or, so who's going to amplify the work? Who's going to uplift the work while we actually doing it and got our heads down? So I think that's the real point of the other side of the network, and not so much the people who got their hands deep in the dirt and that's busy 25 hours out the day. I think the people that are recognizing it, appreciate and want to contribute in their own way, network how to get resources to the people that are doing it with a little bit of nothing and doing the most. We do the most with the least, and everybody know it and everybody see it in my eyes, from my heart at least. I say everybody, and if they don't, then why don't they? That's what we should be out. If they don't, then why not? why don't they know? And why aren't they supporting it? Why is there not a streamline to the resources to the people that need it? Because they're obviously doing the work. And we all know each other, so we can point each other out for you. We already network with each other. We already do great work with each other. We already share resources because we don't got shit. So, we looking for more amplification of the work. We looking for more support in order to, what Caroline said as far as the family dynamic is so important. We that as well when the families get involved, when the parents get involved, and it becomes real. But it's also, access to education on whatever level, student education in schools, community agencies and organizations. That collaboration is important. So it could be as simple as just an email introduction to people in those networking situations. And Brother Amar, who asked that question, is one of the masters of networking, who I consider on the forefront of, if you want to learn how to follow up on your marketing skills and tactics, communicate with Brother Amar Muhammad, who's in the virtual building today. All right, master networker, master connector.
CARENA, do you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion?
Yeah, just kind of agreeing with everyone. I mean, networking and collaboration is honestly like one of the biggest ways to success in this field. I lean on so many farmers and growers in Newark already just to kind of, amplify, my ask, needs, and requests. This year, because of COVID, we shut down, and then we opened up in the middle of the season, and all of our seedlings was donated to us. We didn't purchase anything, and that's just on the strength of relationships and being able to sort of reach out to folks and say, like, I need this, or can you help me? And I think that's just kind of like the language in this space, because farming and growing, you can't do it on your own. You have to have 5-10 people kind of in the back of your pocket if need be. And that's just kind of, because when you're growing, you're not just growing for yourself, you're growing for others. And with that sense, you have to kind of have a community in there with you.
Sure. Awesome. My next question, I'm interested specifically because of the work that FIDEL has done, but also looking into the Ironbound Community Corporation. Oftentimes when urban growing is discussed, it's seen as sort of an anecdote to industrial pollution, urban divestment. And so it's seen as sort of referencing a negative history in a sense. I'm interested if your work sort of draws upon histories of resistance. And so, CARENA, that could be the Ironbound's history. FIDEL, it could be the history of hip hop that you draw from. How are histories that precede your work informing what you do now?
I see what you did there. And I see what Adam did there too with the Brick City, Cream City thing. That was pretty good. But the hip hop started in the park. That whole metaphor, right? That's an organic, do for self-determined idea. Like, as somebody mentioned before about the vacant lots. We have an abundant amount of vacant lots in a small area in the community where we live in Milwaukee, which is a pretty, fairly small size city. And we think about, the ways that we can disrupt what's happening. And also we understand, I can even say through hip hop culture in our educational framework is like, it's a carry on of a new legacy. I mean, implementing of a legacy that was there already. So even with farming and growing in Milwaukee, fortunately, we have legends, in the urban growing world amongst us. Will Allen and Adams and that family, for example, and I just named one or two of them, but international legends. So we get a chance to really learn from the best. And Will Allen had a whole book called The Good Food Revolution. And that's, it's about disrupting the thought process. Really, it's a mindset. It's about being able to educate our communities as far as making choices and making better choices in terms of what we eating and how we utilizing our spaces and taking back our communities and not waiting on permission and not waiting on not waiting on anything ultimately. I think what's a great testament also to fast forward is, when we just kind of did it, we self-started, we got led in the right direction, and where the help was and where the doors would open and say, okay, talk to these people, talk to those people. But it started with us just saying, let's just do this. And we didn't know what to do or how we were going to do it. And so then it led to other people stopping and saying, hey, how can I help? Hey, what do you need? And so I think that attitude is also, from a historical standpoint, that's how we've always gotten things done. It's been outside of traditional framework. And so if we're talking about food justice, and if we're talking about land, et cetera, we're gonna have to be bold, and we're gonna think about things that are maybe not academic, and maybe not supported by your local government, and you have to think about how you can do those things and what kind of partnerships you can build to make.
So does one of the Newark folks want to talk about sort of the role of history informing the work you're doing now? How are you drawing from those that came before you?
I can go. I was waiting to see if Tobias wanted to go. Newark has like a history of like environmental air and water pollution. I mean, we have the airports, Newark Airport, we have the ports, and all of that pollution, I mean, really just hits, honestly, the Black communities the hardest. And that's the communities that Ironbound works with the most because of that. Where Down Bottom Farms is, I mean, we are hit with like bad smells, we're hit with noise pollutions from the airplanes. We have animal fat company that just burns fat for makeup. And so like, we know the hotline number to call when those smells gets too bad. And I think that history though lends itself to us presently, because I like to think that like farming in Down Bottom Farms is kind of like what we like for Newark to be in the future. We like for our soils to be healthy. We like for our pollinators. We like to use our rainwater to water the plants. The history of Newark definitely leads itself into why we do the work that we do right now.
Sure, thank you. Caroline, do you want to jump in?
No, because you know what? I was responding to a message.
Okay, that's good. No worries. Tobias, do you want to jump in after CARENA?
Well, sure. So no problem. I take a little different spin, and so I grew up in a household of 16 in a town outside of Newark called East Orange, and we experienced every issue related to poverty, being in that growing up in a household so large, and food insecurity was at the top of the list. And so I never really thought and saw myself doing work related to food access, food justice later on in life. But it wasn't until, and I thought activism, I don't see myself as an activist, but I do acknowledge myself as an organizer. It wasn't until 2011 when the Occupy Wall Street movement erupted in New York City is what really piqued my interest. I became indoctrinated into that movement. And that's when I started to meet rural and urban farmers, didn't know what an urban farmer was. Started meeting renewable energy technicians, didn't know what that was until they explained this to me, and then became a lead organizer for Occupy Newark, which led to the work that I'm doing now. But and though I acknowledge those who may kind of pave the way to make it easier for me to do this work, but I do want to make a note that it wasn't until 2011 when I became exposed to a social movement that erupted all over the country, Occupy Wall Street, what actually got me engaged into the work that I'm doing now.
Sure, that's really interesting. Thank you.
I just want to add. I want to add one more thing, Mike.
Well,
really, like kind of two more things. So this, for me personally, as we going through this conversation, like I thought about, the historical aspect of it, and I always tell stories about my grandmother and my mother growing up on a farm in Arkansas, and going down there as a kid and seeing food and cows and chickens and like that was just their life, right? And they would walk miles to go feed the animals. And so I had this reality very early in my life that that's a way of living. That's like kind of how it's done. And so to somebody's, you know, who may think about now in terms of like history and, you know, for us in a lot of our families, we don't know a lot of history back a few levels, like a few generations. And so this has also allowed a lot of people to reconnect with their family history and their family roots and their family lineage.
Sure.
And guess what? Family land. A lot of us had land that was taken away in a lot of different ways in a lot of different places in the South, including my family in Arkansas. And so a lot of Black people in the North are now looking at this thing and saying, wait a minute, urban agriculture is not anything new per se. So what about reclaiming this land? Let's go back and look into the land that our family once had.
Thank you. So Fidel gets us to a question that I think is hovering over a lot of these discussions, the issue of ownership. And so the idea of owning land or, for example, entrepreneurial endeavors that build off of urban agriculture. So the question that I want to raise for the four of you is, how do you approach that question of ownership? And so that's a big question, I know, and I think each of you could probably tackle it in your own ways. But also we have some comments in the chat of sort of the idea of going big versus sort of smaller scale interventions. Milwaukee is home to, or was home to, both Growing Power and a pretty renowned urban farm called Sweetwater Organics. Both of them tried to sort of increase production, go big, and they both ended up folding. And so the idea of issues of ownership in urban agriculture, how do you start to have that conversation? And I think ultimately this gets to what might be our last question, is how do you make these things permanently sustainable? A few folks are asking, how do you make sure that these things last? So again, a lot to unpack, but feel free to dive right in.
I think what Fidel said is so true. That's one of the things that I'm looking at in my neighborhood right now is some of the vacant lots and how I can obtain some, at least one, to start a garden. And I find that it's a little bit, it's difficult. And because for, you know, the amount of money that you need to acquire and then develop that land and so on and so forth, they don't make it easy for us. And I think that we need to do that, because what I found is you know, a lot of times when I went to these farms, I would have to go outside of my community, and I found that a lot of people that live in my community weren't venturing out. And so we need these vacant lots in our community, so those people who look like me, that we see every day, that we're connecting with, that I'm teaching and so on and so forth, they want to get their hands on the soil. They want this. The thing of it is that what we are missing, we're missing the financial resources. You know, I have a garden bed. A garden bed was gifted to me, was given to me. I have two. Here's the thing. Giving me a garden bed without giving me all the tools that I need to work, I didn't have the tools. But because I know people and I was able to get them, but a lot of people don't have those resources. So it's like telling a man to pull himself up or herself up by the bootstraps, and we don't have any shoestrings. And so we need the tools. We need, you know, that's, yeah, we need to make it easier.
Sure.
After we have a vacant lot, there's nothing on it. We have a vacant house that's dilapidated. There's nothing on it. We need our politicians, our community leaders, those that believe that Black Lives Matter and food should be a right for everybody. We need those people to start coming in and saying, yes, I support you, and let's do this, because we are out there doing it.
Anyone from Newark want to jump in on these issues of ownership, sustainability?
So growing up, there was no lessons taught about land ownership. What was drilled in my household was home ownership. You want to, get a job, get an education, get a job, get a family, and own a home. And so it wasn't until becoming a business owner, especially with establishing North Science and Sustainability as an organization. It was 2 years ago. A board member, advisory board member, said, Tobias, where do you see this organization going? In the next 5+ years. So I said, well, I want to be a statewide organization. I want to have international outreach and stuff like that. He says, well, how are you going to do that if you don't have any land that you're building on? And so it made sense and it clicked for me. And so as I'm a part of this small but growing movement of agriculturalists here in North, I am one of the ones that are transitioning from leaseholder to landowner, where we're in the process of closing on 3 city-owned properties and redeveloping those properties. And 2 of those properties we are using as a community garden will allow us to transform it into a sustainable year-round urban farm. And so, and then it helps with increasing the entrepreneurship or the business model component to the work that we're doing, because it's needed. And so, like right now we have a small-scale CSA, but the redevelopment of these 2 properties will allow us to increase the CSA membership and also partner with other local growers to introduce ways we can bring things to the market, but not lose ourselves in the process as well.
Perfect. Fidel or CARENA, do you want to piggyback off of that?
I'll jump in for the, I look at that a few different ways. I really appreciate that, Tobias, that your experience could probably be pretty insightful to some of us here in Milwaukee in terms of how that model of transfer of lease to ownership of the city property could be very interesting to just see, because as we learn, and we do have a lot of similarities levels. So good luck, and I look forward to learning more about that. For us, ownership comes up in a lot of different, yes, sir. It comes in a lot of different levels for us. I think, on a small scale, starting small scale, I think was part of your question too. That was the advice and the wisdom and the jewel from the legend, Will Allen himself. He said, people come to me with great grand dreams, and I've carried that message into a lot of conversations and meetings with people where I say, look, I'm gonna tell you like Will Allen told me, start small, all right? Somebody, a whole legend, he's known outer space, okay? So if he says start small, you might want to start small and grow, all right? So, because people have great grand ideas, and that's amazing. And we're supposed to have great grand, and a whole bunch of them, that's great. And so I think even in part in some of the information to our young people, about marketing, marketability, other skill sets that can be applied in this space. We introduce young people to what they call the blue industry, the green industry. What kind of skills and what kind of products and what kind of services can we develop? When we started the Peace Park and Garden on 5th and Locust, people, the alderwoman was calling me and said, hey, Fidel, people call in my office and they want to know how can they do what you did on 5th and Locust? Can I just send them your way? Can I just send them your way? And it was churches and residents and all that. And so guess what we did? We started a business, and we started, and so we started charging, and we started being able to hire young people to help us activate these different little projects that were coming our way just based on, people wanting to activate their own homes, their own backyards, their own church lots, and things of that nature. So I think ownership come in a lot of different ways, and naturally, I think what I've learned, even through my travels and conversating with other people in other cities, to Tobias's point earlier, is like, we learned that a lot of our scenarios are very similar in other places. And one of the things is, that community engagement, that youth engagement piece on a consistent level. So even like, getting young people to understand the idea of, on a small level, like how do we take ownership or take accountability for what happens in our environment, in our living environment? How do we take ownership and responsibility for that?
Right.
And then even on a bigger level, let's think about the developmental process. Like, okay, if we have a space, you know, we've talked to as you Mike, me and Mike have been in this conversation with the city about buying vacant lots, you know, about buying vacant lots that we've activated, et cetera. And so the process, I look at it like we need to communicate to as many people as possible about the process, and then the ownership will expand, because I think a lot of it is just people just don't know the process. To Caroline's point about the thing, we should talk offline, and I can help you with that process in terms of, like, you know, acquiring the land. We went to the alderwoman and we said, who gonna stop us? What y'all gonna do? If we just start growing over here, what y'all gonna do? I asked her, I said, what's the worst that can happen? They gonna come arrest us, they gonna write us a ticket, what's gonna happen? Because we finna do this. And we'll holler at y'all later. Because y'all ain't getting nothing with it for 30 years. What am I supposed to do? Stand here and wait? Ask for y'all permission? I doubt it. We finna do something. We finna put up some art and some gardens, and what y'all gonna do? Who gonna come for us? I bet you wouldn't nobody that came, but she gave us the right direction. She told us who to talk to, and then things happen, right? But if you just take it over, it's like, hey, you know, wait to see what happens. And
I just want to say thank you, Fidel. I will most definitely be visiting your farm and talking and trying to glean as much information as I can.
it's a little pocket space. It ain't no farm.
But that's okay. Listen, I'm with you. Small, starting small.
Yep. And to that space, like, we also use that as a catapult to activate another space at MLK and Ring with Heart Love Place. And now Heart Love Place is like growing and using that in their early development program. So the idea is to, like, you know, start it and then let the community activate it as they see fit. Let the schools in the neighborhood activate it as they see fit. Let the churches, and you know, it's not ours. I don't look at it like ownership. You know, I don't really want to own it per se. You know what I mean? But I do want to protect it, because that's the thing. They could come and move our park tonight. They could say, you know what, guys, we're gonna build another gas station and an apartment building on top. What y'all gonna do? We moved. You know what I mean? And then we got to put up a whole community fight, which, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so that's the other aspect of looking at it. To Caroline's point, we don't have the resources for that fight. That's a whole different kind of smoke that we don't necessarily have the gas for. So what do we do in that point? So that ownership piece is real. And I look at it like pushing it to another level. And that's a bigger conversation that I'm open to have with anybody on the conversation.
Before we let Karina chime in, I just want to let folks know that we're able to stay on this chat until about 12:20. So please stick around. If you gotta go, you gotta go. But please feel free to keep engaging. So Karina, do you have anything you want to add to this issue of the idea or concept of ownership?
Yeah. Also, like being based in Newark with Tobias, I do look forward to him owning and like having that land as well, because we lease our land as well with Down Bottom Farms, and there's a lot of regulations and stipulations that they put on us just in terms of how we operate. So we have a hoop house that we can't even cover out of fear that it may blow away, which is it's kind of like annoying, because that doesn't happen really. But then to Fidel's point about you know, looking at it at protecting land, and I think like community land trust is something that we talk about at ICC as well. You know, having land that is preserved for years, and also we're just started a program with like a housing kind of land trust as well, to kind of minimize gentrification in our communities. So folks can come in and buy like a house, but they won't be able to resell it at, you know, triple the value, in, you know, which leads to gentrification. Cooperatives is something that I'm looking into more on a personal level, just in terms of, you know, owning land with other folks. In that way, you know, wealth is distributed out throughout many and not just one, as well as decision-making power, and such as those things. So cooperatives and community land trusts, I think, are definitely the two alternatives right now.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing those options up. We have a few questions in the chat that kind of build off of some of these discussions, but also push in a little different way. The methods of growing in terms of indoor versus outdoor, types of growing systems, aquaponics, hydroponics. How do you see urban growing moving forward, both I think for your individual projects, but also on a broader level? How do you see this field evolving?
I'll start. I think indoor growing and aquaponics and hydroponics, I think those systems are cool. They reduce water but from what I've seen, I mean we have a large aquaponics farm in Newark, one of the largest. Um, and I'll say, you can only grow so many things with those systems. You can't grow everything, and I don't think that it will feed, everybody that it claims to feed. It's a cool way if you have a small space, but I truly enjoy doing outdoor farming. There's techniques that are sustainable. We have a solar power greenhouse. We have a rain catching water system. I don't think that I wouldn't say that indoor farming is more sustainable than outdoor for sure.
Okay.
For us, if I could just jump in right quick, for us, that's a good question. Again, for us, it's an educational and it's an exposure thing. So we use aquaponics as a system to introduce young people to water science, microbiology, and like just the concept itself. Even a lot of grown-ups that come in our space at True School, where we do after school and summer program for young adults and high school students, they're blown away by the concept. They never heard of it before. And so we use it as more of a discovery tool. We're not heavy into the science. It's more than a notion, so I do know people who are heavy into it. It's a big thing in Milwaukee. And I know people who are, experts, and they help us support the educational process of teaching young people about bigger water issues, bigger environmental justice issues by sparking a conversation, talking about growing food without soil through fish waste.
Mm-hmm.
I see it, for me, it's very, very small. As I walk around my community, I found out, in meeting my neighbors, I found out there's somebody that has chickens and grows, and some of the kids coming up and really holding an egg, really, that came from a chicken, and it's brown. And they're like, why is it brown? Because when you go to the grocery store, the chickens the eggs are white. I mean, it's those simple things, and finding, just those things. I think if we just started small, whether it's somebody growing sprouts in their own house, let's take baby steps, because everybody isn't ready for, a whole lot right now. But it's these baby steps that prepares us for something bigger and better. And the education is always happening, like I said, whether it's in your house or it's on a lot or it's, acres. But finding people where they are, and let's start there. That's where I am.
Sure. Tobias, do you want to add anything on sort of the technological side or sort of the way that growing will look in cities as we move forward? Or how do you see it working?
Well, we definitely have to incorporate more technology into our agricultural practices. I mean, we have so many challenges. Climate change, the soil is becoming more and more reduced, and so we have to look at indoor growing, indoor farming. There's a guy who's from Japan. He does some commercial indoor farming in the city outside of Newark. This guy is growing strawberries indoors, and one strawberry he sells his produce to high-end restaurants, but one strawberry is sold at $3 to $5. Madness, yeah, and it's big, it's huge, but still. And so, and then we have, the country's largest indoor farm based in North, Aero Farm.
Aero Farms, yeah.
And so, and one of the features that we'll have at our site, the redevelopment of our site, is a hydroponic greenhouse as well. And so we have to start looking at year-round food production. And the only way to do that is to start taking things indoors and looking at technology to enhance that.
Okay.
Hi.
A few of the questions are sort of referencing the current pandemic. And so rather than sort of focusing on one pandemic, I think we're also at a moment when we're focusing on this pandemic of things like systematic racism, police brutality. How can urban agriculture address either of these pandemics? How do you see this current moment where people are, I think, legitimately questioning things? How does this moment sort of set the stage perhaps for something new? And if so, what role does urban growing, food production play in those conversations? Or what role could it play?
That's a heavy question.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're coming to the end, so I wanted to
That's
make
a heavy
sure.
question. I mean, I think that there are, you know, I mean, there's, I hate to be so, basic with it, right? But I tend to make sure that it's as plain as possible in talking about certain things. And I think we understand that we are what we eat mentally, physically, spiritually, and otherwise. I think that we can put a real emphasis on, food as a connector of communities and a connector of our families and our lineage and our histories. And, there's a lot of power that comes along with, again, that those choices that we're able to make and that discipline that we're able to have that come along with food, and in our communities. And as we see, I think one of the biggest businesses that we see being hit in this time, as we speaking about the current day, is the food industry, the restaurant industry. And so I think just very much more aware and educated about the chain of where these things come from, how they get to our tables, and how we end up, educating our young people to be better equipped to navigate and have these conversations in a very honest way, because we have to really take it we got to take up a couple notches, because it's really a chemical warfare type situation going on. And so, we got to really do some research, and we have to study our opposition on that level, and where is this attack coming from, and then what do we do to position ourselves. So I think it's a long strategy that we have to think about, and thinking about our health is a good thing, that people are very much more self-conscious about their own well-being and their health and their families' safety right now. So I think accelerating that conversation, spreading the awareness, spreading the education is super important right now.
Sure.
So people don't get confused and get misled.
Right.
I'll be quiet.
Anyone else want to chime in? Sort of this moment of pandemic, what do you see it leading to for this field of urban growing? Is it a moment purely of crisis? Is there a potential for opportunity here? How do you sort of use this current incredibly troubled environment to produce something perhaps new?
I'll go. I think something that I've noticed during the pandemic, as far as food and growing, is that I think something that farmers always knew is that there's always an abundance of produce. And there's been so many produce that has been given away during this time. There's been also a lot of actions around they're having a name, but I can't think of it. It's in New York and other places, it's like the refrigerators that hold the food, and that's been going on during the pandemic. And then there's also been what's it called, like milk crates donations, and so I think the pandemic has just shown how much there is to give away. Honestly, that's just something that I'm thinking on right now.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else?
That's deep. I've been thinking about that too. I've been like, I don't even know if I trust all that food they be giving away. I mean, it's like so much. And I'm like, damn, I understand it. And I even appreciate it, even grateful for the people that need all of that. But, it's kind of even so much that it's suspect. I don't even know. And maybe I'm just tripping. I don't know.
Well, I think we can build off of that idea. I mean, does the fact that this is so readily available lead us to re-question distribution systems post-pandemic? Does it lead us to rethink food
Yes.
systems after this? And if so, how do we build off of that? If, as we see in the comments, an article about people putting stock fridges on sidewalks in Philadelphia, how does that speak to what can come after this?
That's a really great question, because I have been seeing innovative community activations across the country. And I'm like, you know, I mean, we taking notes and we thinking about, you know, what could we implement and what makes sense in our environment. Everything don't work everywhere, but you see the solutions that people are collaborating to come up with in communities, and it's inspiring. So that's a great question also.
I think too that especially I find I intentionally did not do a third garden bed this year because I am aware and connected with so many community gardens that are growing all kinds of food. And if you think about it, at the end of the year, at the end of the growing season, there's a lot of food that just goes to waste. And I think we need to try to figure out how we can get that food in people's hands. And I was reading something, and they were talking about even big farmers, they throw away over 1 million pounds of food per year. And I don't think anybody should go hungry, especially in America when we throw so much food away. But I think because of the pandemic, for me, again, it has made me look around in my own community and what's going on and how I can help. And I'm very appreciative. I just really do want to give Pat Mueller a shout out, because she's always trying to figure out how can we bring fresh produce to the community. And when you think about 38th and Belite, and it is literally, and I don't like calling places a food desert, but that's the term a lot of people use. And I was there, and you find people who just stop by and ask, what is this and what is that? I mean, really, I was someplace a couple of years ago talking about food, and I said, oh, one of the ingredients is cilantro. And literally, I had a 7-year-old, and then maybe an hour or so later, a 76-year-old ask me, what is cilantro? So the pandemic for me has helped me even become even more aware of what all of you are saying, the educational piece and the need for more urban gardens in our communities to make people remember, yes, even when I was younger, I had my grandmother had a farm and we grew stuff and so on and so forth. But these farmers markets are, I think, community farmers markets, especially in the inner city. We find them, you know, in suburban communities and you know, the yuppies and but in poor communities, you don't see them, and it's just amazing when people see it and they start talking, I want this. They're yearning for it. They're yearning for it. So I see it as an opportunity. I think a lot of things have been happening because of the pandemic.
Sure, sure. Well, we are just almost out of time. I want to give the four of you a chance to add any final comments. You have an audience that is hopefully from around the nation. What would your final message be to the 35 folks still here? In a brief sort of summation, what would you want them to take from the awesome work that you all are doing?
Well, I just say that for myself is that I cannot single-handedly solve the world's problems related to hunger and hunger relief, but I know how to transform a vacant lot in my community so that the residents in this area can have access or more access to freshly grown produce. I know how to create a garden on urban farm. I know how to do that.
Anyone else? Final thoughts? And you don't have to. I just want to give you a chance to.
I just say thanks everybody for coming to the webinar and joining us at the discussion today. If you want to follow more of like the farming work that I do at Down Bottom Farms, we have an Instagram page, Down Bottom Farms. It's actually like down_bottoms_farms, but if you search it, I'm sure you can find it. Yeah, thank you again. Appreciate the discussion from everybody on the panel as well.
Can you drop that in the chat?
Yep, someone just, Regis just dropped it in.
Okay.
Oh.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Regis fast, yo.
Yeah.
He's fast. I'll just say thank you again, Mike, Regis, everybody who helped put this together. And what's the young lady's name that's controlling? Chelsea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chelsea. And I think, you know, conversations like these are definitely much more needed. I can't wait to come out to Newark and come check out the farm spaces, come see what you all are doing, put on some boots, kick some dirt around with you all, harvest some food, working to do a cleanup, whatever y'all doing, I'm down. All right. So keep us informed. I want to say, you know, let's stay better connected to everybody. If you would like to reach out, I put the Facebook to our Peace Park and Garden in the chat, and yeah, Regis will connect with you directly with me if you need to be connected. And I mean, I just think it's really about the follow-up. So, you know, all of us that want to follow up, let's follow up. I don't know who's all on the line, but I'm sure Miguel, I'm gonna follow up with you. Ahmad, I'm following up with you. A lot of the people that's here, we have worked together and we connected. And that's the other beautiful thing about it is we grow in relationships. We're not just growing plants and soil and all that. We're growing relationships, y'all. So let's keep building and let's keep growing together.
I would just like to chime in and say thank you, everybody. This has just been a wonderful talk. And I, like you, Fidel, so happy to see so many awesome people that I know. And I just really want to say what I believe wholeheartedly is this, what we're doing is encouraging people to eat healthier for their mind, body, and spirit. And I think that is just so important. We have to understand that food heals. It connects us to each other and with our inner being spirit. So thank you, Regis. Thank you, Chelsea. I see you, Ahmad. You know you need some of this food.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, so feel free to engage with one another, and please join the last session next Saturday, the very last online discussion for the exhibition. Thank you to our Newark friends, and thank you to everyone in Milwaukee. And so have a great week.
And thank you, Michael. You're a great moderator. Moderator. Thank you.
You all made it really easy. So thank you so much.
Mike is a rock star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye.